You're listening to the Survivor Sweat Podcast with Mike Buchmiller and Russell Rosenblum. If you're looking for strategy articles and just about everything Survivor, head to survivorsweat.com. Now, let's get to it.
All right, welcome back. Survivor Sweat Pod 13. We are back in the studio. It must mean the contest is getting serious.
It is. There are definitely some people sweating out there. I see them keep pinging out on Twitter trying to figure out what to do.
Wow, yeah, we're down to 80 now. It is getting serious for sure. For those of you that are tuning in for the first time, where have you been? We are last year's Jed entry. We were the co-champions. But as some of you who's been watching the pod, Jed is dead. And for the third straight week, the Chalkers are dead. And this time on Turkey Day.
Yep.
Jeez. As we've mentioned before, we're a little ahead of our time on this. And so that's why we're dead. Not taking the favorites.
Like in trading, being early is being wrong. So
it sure looks that way.
But again, it doesn't matter. And this is conversations we have year after year anyway. We'll have people say, well, okay, I understand we have to avoid the chalk, but not this week. We'll do it next week, right? You don't know when the big favorites are going to fall, but that's where all your equity is. So you really have to stick with a strategy. And even though it always feels bad when you're knocked out, it's really no worse to get knocked out in week, 5 or something we were done, than it is to get knocked out on Turkey Day.
I thought we made it almost to 7.
Maybe, I don't know, it's all a blur. But that
blur.
goes to the point, right? Yeah. It doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't matter if you get knocked out next week or Christmas Day. Like, you either win or you don't. It's winner take all.
Yeah, speaking of which, trolling Twitter, how sick is it that Mr. Derek Stevens has everybody picking on Thanksgiving, a day of thanks. And so you got everybody around chumming with your family, with your life on the line here in Survivor. So,
well, you get what you pay for. He charges no juice, so you play by his rules. But actually, I'll tell you something. So we talk to people that play Survivor, but not Circa, and some of them are very, very good, very skilled, very great math guys. And whenever I bring up this contest, they always say to me, I don't understand, what the hell? Like, you've got to pick a team on Christmas Day? You got to pick a team on Thanksgiving? Like, that's impossible.
Yeah, they want no part of it.
Correct. It really does change the dynamic a lot because you've only got a couple of teams to pick from, and it's tough. And, I will say, going back to us, obviously we're knocked out, as you alluded to, but I feel like the path we've had since we've been knocked out, which we would have had, has been totally solid.
Yeah.
And so it does go to that point. It doesn't matter when you're knocked out. It doesn't matter if you got knocked out this Thursday, this Sunday, or you got knocked out in week 5 or 7. Like, you're going to have to hit everything along your path.
Yeah, of course. And to think that you're forced to hold these teams back for a specific special weekend, and 16 individuals, I think it was 15 or 16 individuals, did not do so. They had no favorite, and yet they hit the button, the Packers button.
Yep.
And it's like...
As we talked about last week, we talked about last week on the pod.
Yeah.
Somebody had asked us, what do I do if I don't have a favorite? Who do I take? And we went through all the options, but really it was not even remotely close. No. You take Green Bay. And I'm going to say it again. It's not because I sat here saying Green Bay has like a materially better chance to win than the Jets.
Not at all.
Actually, of all of them, maybe Seattle had the best chance as a dog at home, right? But the reality is you only had 9% of the field that could take Miami, and you had over 50% that could take Detroit. So if the chances of your dog are winning are basically the same no matter which one you take, they're bad. At least when your team wins, you've knocked half the field out.
That's
Otherwise,
correct.
your team wins, you've knocked 10% out. Like, you're not going to win this game very often. When you do it, you better make some big headway.
Absolutely. We discussed all the permutations with that and the percentages. And the correct play was hitting the Packers and not being result-oriented.
Yeah, not close. We said it last week.
We thought the Packers were going to lose.
I was pretty sure they were going to lose.
But if one dog was going to win, that's the dog you want.
That's the dog you want. It's not the one that's most likely to win. It's the one that when they win, you're going to make up the most headway on the field.
Yeah, just absolute carnage and wipes out a big percentage of the pool, obviously. I think it was like 58% or something.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah. As it was, predicted, it would have to be. You looked at what people had remaining, and very, very few people had 2 options for Thanksgiving. So put it this way, the ones that did are immaterial. Maybe there were 10, I don't know. So at the end of the day, you kind of know who everybody's going to take.
Yeah.
And so when you talked about earlier saving teams and holding teams and, us getting knocked out earlier in the season, the reality is I don't want to say we called it because we could have just as easily been wrong. Any of these favorites can lose. It's the NFL. Anybody can win or lose. But there were people that specifically saved Detroit for Thanksgiving. We specifically were not saving Detroit for Thanksgiving as soon as it became more and more apparent that everybody was saving Detroit. Yeah. And we had this conversation the last few weeks about burning Dallas and Detroit in the couple of weeks, the 2 to 3 weeks, both of them prior to Thanksgiving, and just going with Miami because no one was going to have them left.
Yeah, there was like 9% that had the opportunity to take them.
And look, Miami could have, you never know. Miami could lose too. Tua could have gone out in the first quarter. They lose the game. Jets have a good defense. And
100%.
If Miami loses, it's not like I'm going to, and Dallas still won. I'm not going to say, oh God, we've had a terrible strategy. We didn't. It's just, we're in a spot where when we're right, we could lose half the field. And when we're wrong, we're going down with 9% of the field. If we could have got there, we would have been right. But
if
you ever find yourself going out with half the field, you are on the wrong pick. Like, that's just unequivocal.
100%.
So, and actually, going back to this weekend, what I found really interesting, I'm sure we mentioned it last week too. Normally, the Thanksgiving day is the painful day, right? Or Christmas, right? They're so painful because you have so few games to choose from. This particular year, the problem is it wasn't that you had to pick 2 games, one of which had to be on Thanksgiving. You had to pick one on Thanksgiving and then one on Sunday, Monday.
Yeah.
Every game on Sunday, Monday was awful.
Brutal.
And you're just in a terrible spot. Like, if you could, if this wasn't Thanksgiving and all the games were combined, most people would have probably, assuming you had them available, you would have taken 2 of the games that played on Thursday, Friday, probably. And,
absolutely. I think 4 of the 5 top favorites, excluding Kansas City,
correct.
They play on Sunday.
Right.
They were all on Thanksgiving. So you had a plethora of picks, and it was basically, which one that you wanted to map out, and more or less which one would have the least amount of equity
correct.
on it, which would have been our pick, which is Miami.
Right. And so I think that's also because people didn't pivot from day one. I mean, you had, before the season started, Aaron Rodgers supposed to be quarterback for the Jets. Yep. I think people said, okay, looking at the games out here, I'm probably going to save Detroit or Dallas. Mm-hmm. And then I think people burned Dallas a little bit earlier. There were some good opportunities for Dallas, and that makes sense. But I don't think they pivoted after quarter one of game one and said, you know what, maybe we should save Miami instead and kind of evaluate it. I remember our strategy was to save all 3 for as long as we could. And I would stick with that strategy next year. But, you save them as long as you can because you really are trying to see. It's the NFL. And again, if Tua went down or Dak went down, or you may not be taking those same teams.
Yeah, and for the record, we've always discussed, in part of our strategy, is we want to keep multiple teams for this weekend because we don't know which one will end up being good or bad or what the matchup turns out to. If we would have survived to this point, I believe we would have had Detroit and Miami as an option. We burned Dallas because we originally thought that Dallas would be the chalk, and the chalkers.
Although you called burning Detroit, I think last week, if I remember right, and Dallas 2 weeks ago, and we probably would have. It's hard to say. It's always, everybody can always say what they're going to do, but that's until you're actually hitting the button, it's hard to know what you really would have done.
100% correct. 2 entered the week with all 10 entries. One of those laid the wood, all 10. With the Detroit Lions, Mr. Motor City.
So you think maybe he's like a Detroit fan in general? Is that what you're saying?
I don't think he is now.
Yeah, probably not so much. We actually tried to reach out to him. We're still working on. We'd like to bring him out here. I'd love to hear his strategy and his decisions.
Yeah, it sounds like he's willing to discuss a little bit of that. And so, to lose in that format, all 10, graciously wanting to come on and discuss it. So we'll work that out. We'll get him on here and we'll get a little bit of his process and find out, how long he planned to go with these picks. Does he stop through Thanksgiving week?
I don't know. I assume he knows, but sometimes, again, you can have a strategy and you don't know what you're going to do until you do it.
Yeah. So I was checking out, that's right. We had a subscriber question.
Excellent.
And we always wait to the end, but this is just too good. So one of our subscribers was wondering, who took the Packers,
this was amazing,
but also had the opportunity to take the Lions. And so I looked through, there was 3 on Survivor Atlas. One gentleman, he had 6 entries heading into Thanksgiving. He took 4 Detroit, 1 Miami, and 1 Green Bay. So he got through there. Another gentleman took 2. He came in with 2.
And by the way, I'm going to assume everybody had Green Bay available. Assume it's 100%, right? I'm assuming the guy that took 4 Detroit, 1 Miami, I didn't look. You probably did. I assume he didn't have more than 1 Miami available. I would have tried to go 4 Miami, 1 Detroit, but whatever. Ignoring the Miami pick for a minute. So he has 4 Detroit, 1 Green Bay. If I had 5 picks and I only had Detroit available and, of course, Green Bay, I actually think that's a very reasonable mix.
Yeah.
Again, not like we thought Detroit would lose, but I think if you have 5 picks left, it's 4-1. I think if you have 2 picks left and you only have Detroit and Green Bay, I think you put them both on Detroit. It's a little bit different. I wouldn't go 1-1 there.
So right below that, on our outline here, one gentleman put 1 on Detroit and 1 on Green Bay. He just wanted to make sure that he survived. And I'm sure he was happy to lose that Detroit entry.
I'm going to oversimplify this because it has to do with popularity too, but I am going to say, think of it this way. If you think that Detroit has a 75% chance to win, right? And again, this is overly simplified. If you think Detroit has a 75% chance to win, you want to have less than 25% of your picks on the other side. So if you have, 4 or 5 picks, if you have 10 picks, my opinion, I know Motor City went the other way, I probably go 8 on Detroit, 2 on Green Bay. Maybe 9-1, maybe 7-3. I mean, somewhere in there. But I think 8-2 for me, that would be the sweet spot. I think that would make sense. But if you only have 2, if you put 1 on Green Bay, by definition, it's half your picks, right? So now you're in this weird spot where you just put your pick on Green Bay and you still hope they lose.
Yeah.
Right? You're supposed to be at least indifferent. Like, you're not supposed to care that much. And that goes to the popularity aspect. And that's why I won't oversimplify the math.
Again, as we say, it's very hard to hit that button. And when you put 1 on each side, you just know that you're going to survive. And so...
unless they tie. And don't forget, everybody, it's rare, but we lost some picks last year to a tie, and someone else lost some to a tie. There were, I think, 2 ties in the NFL last year that had survivor implications. And a tie, you lose. In case people didn't know that by now, I hope they know that, but you never know. And I cut you off. You had another entry you wanted to discuss.
Oh, yeah. And so the one we discussed last week, the gentleman that had 3 entries, he split Detroit, Green Bay, because he only had 1 favorite. He only had Detroit to play with. So he went Detroit, Green Bay, and then he put his 3rd on the Jets.
I mean, if he doesn't have a choice, I think that's actually, I hadn't really thought about what I do with 3 entries and only 1 favorite. Obviously, you take the favorite where you can. If I have 2 dogs, I'm not going to put them both on Green Bay. Green Bay Jets or Green Bay Seattle, if he had them, maybe he didn't have them. You're flipping a coin again. Like, again, I would prefer to take the dog that the fewest people are, more people are on, the popularities on the favorite side. And I don't really know, only had 9% on Miami, so I'd prefer to take... who did Dallas play again? The game was so non-memorable that it's hard to remember who they played. I prefer to take them.
The Washington Commanders.
That's it, Riverboat Ron.
Riverboat Ron, for sure.
No, I would prefer to take them if you had them. It wouldn't matter. They both lose.
Yeah.
Right, but I'm not trying to be results-oriented. I'm just saying where I would put them if I had my choice. But I would, in that instance, you don't have a choice. You've got to take a dog, so do it. Now, was there anybody else that took...
Oh, yeah. So for our subscriber, 3 took... Green Bay when they had a chance to lay it all on the other side, but they played the other side. But then there was one other that had Detroit in their pocket. L.A. Joneser. How about this story?
So he had Detroit.
Yes.
So he took Detroit.
No.
Well, sort of. Maybe.
So
depends who you ask. Incredible
misclick. And it's been out there in the Twitter world universe. And he's actually come forward. He said that he had a death in the family and he was a little cloudy in his head. And he just misclicked. He had Detroit and took Green Bay.
Like he thought, but as you told me before, actually, we've discussed this prior. I'm sort of joking around, but he actually thought he took Detroit. Even through Thursday, Friday, he was rooting for Detroit. Saturday,
he was crushed. He was done.
It's like Saturday morning, I think, before he realizes that I didn't take Detroit. And you remember how he realized this?
Yes, of course. So
crazy.
He thinks he's done. He's his life is over. He's out of the contest, and he gets a phone call from a proxy, his proxy, and his proxy saying, "Hey, where's your pick?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?
I'm busted.
I'm busted." Right. And he goes, "No, you took Green Bay." He couldn't believe it.
And then for clarity, because when I heard this, I was a little confused. Like, did the proxy mess up his pick? And as it turns out, he normally uses a proxy. He happened to be in Vegas or something.
So there's been some talk about that. There was talk that he was in Vegas, and he came out again. He stated for the record, he clicked it on his computer through the proxy thing, and so he made a mistake. And misclicked, and as it turns out, a pretty good mistake. And so, you've heard us mention many a times about the insurance of having a proxy, and in this case,
right. And that, to be clear, I mean, it should be pretty clear. Having the proxy does nothing for his misclick. He misclicked. It would have, by the way, to be clear, if he misclicked and then immediately called the proxy and said, "Oh gosh, I misclicked. Can you fix my pick?"
That's correct.
Because if you misclick at Circa, there's nothing you're calling them or doing. You could drive down there. You could dance on your head. They don't really care. You're done. One
chance.
click, you're finished.
That's correct.
But what really helped him with the proxy was that if he just went through Circa and had no proxy, he just assumes he's out.
Yeah.
And the joke is, he'll never know.
No.
Because he'll then be out on Sunday because he won't get a pick in. Yeah. He's not going to go back and look at the sheet and see his name and no pick because he's not going to look anymore.
No, you're going to show up on the Vissen contest, and you're going to be one of those statistics. You're going to be the no pick.
But he won't know it's him. He'll literally look and go, "My God, I can't believe people still have no picks." Like having no idea it's actually him, right?
Incredible.
But it is amazing that you had the proxy actually call him up, which is very cool. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Week one, if they've got 1,000 people they're proxying and someone, I mean, there's only so much you can do. But at this point, at the time there were more than 80 left, 130, maybe the proxies got 20 of them, 30 of them, I don't know. It's a little bit easier to call them. And the proxies really do want you to survive. I mean, it's always a good story for them if they proxied you and you won the thing.
Yeah,
so
of course.
They do. They don't have an economic interest, but they have a vested interest in helping you out.
Of course. And just an incredible story. And I reached out to him on the X handle and just said, "Hey, man, like there's a lot of people in the Survivor community that are rooting for you. I mean, if he comes through and wins this thing,
I mean, put it this way,
what
Alex,
a story.
Because I know that Alex Brown, who we hung out with this weekend, who we had on the pod a couple weeks ago, and our co-winner last year, and he didn't have any favorites left. And
he did not.
So he didn't have a choice, but he took the Packers.
He did.
And we were actually at the Raiders game, and it was this awkward moment because, what kind of mood's he going to be in if the Packers lose, right, for the rest of the day? But, he's not expecting them to win. You got to kind of suck it up. You told him the L.A. Joneser story as we sat there, and he's like, "Oh, crap." And he has the Packers just like you, so they both make it through. He's like, "I don't think I can beat, that's like a team of destiny. Like, how am I going to beat that guy?"
Of course. Yeah. So, Alex Brown, the defending champ, he's the only guy, well, we're out, so he can have the improbable repeat down to 80. And here he is on another sick run. And he takes, on Sunday, he takes the underdog Falcons.
He went dog. And we were actually giving him a hard time, Alex. I know you listen to the pod and we've said this. We've been giving him a hard time about taking big favorites, taking the chalk, taking the popular teams all year. And suddenly he wakes up and of course he didn't have a choice on Turkey Day. Well, he had a choice over many other weeks to not end up with only the Packers. But he wakes up on Turkey Day, takes the Packers, and then on Sunday he takes a small dog and the Falcons, and he goes dog to advance.
Incredible to be here with 80 left. So against 79, the improbable run last year with one entry.
Yeah, it's impossible.
And now here he is again. I mean, incredible.
And I did ask him, and even though the answer should be pretty clear, I did ask him. So last year when you won this thing, did you take any dogs ever? And he had to pause for a second, but just because he wanted to be sure, he goes, "I'm like 95% sure I've never taken a dog in a Survivor."
Yeah.
Like, it just, no.
No, exactly.
Like he's trying, I don't think we have either. I'm trying to think of any time, and I don't think we've ever taken a dog. We might have taken a 1.5 or 2.5 point favorite, or 2.5. Like if it's less than a field goal, like it
was in the 50% win rate.
Yeah, like 56. Yeah, but we've never taken something that starts with a 3 or a 4.
Yeah, so just absolutely improbable for L.A. Joneser and improbable for Alex Brown to still be here with 80 left. So week 12 recap: 292 hit the skids, 78.5% of that remaining entries go down. There are 80 left of the original 9,267. Just incredible. 99.1% of the entire pool has been clipped, including the one no pick. I just really hope that the contestant's okay. It's most likely a misclick. I'm assuming at this point when the entries need to be in. The equity of these tickets at this point is just astronomical. So,
and for the first time all year, the pace is actually at or slightly better than it was last year. When I say better, like losing more people.
Oh, it's caught up fast.
Right, but for the rest of the year, it's been not that close. And now it's actually more.
Yeah. Somebody made a comment like, did the guy get thrown in the can? Like, is he in jail? And I'm like, you got one phone call.
That's
you're
true.
calling your proxy for crying out loud. Holy mackerel. That's unbelievable.
I can see you being on the phone with your proxy going, okay, look, I know you're not already my proxy. You can have half my pick. Here's my login information.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I mean, otherwise, what are you going to do? You're just going to go to zero?
Hey, I'd rather sit in the can and have a pick in.
Anyway, are there games next week too, or we're done?
Yes.
All right, then we should probably take a break.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we will be back to tee it up for week 13.
Time for a message from our sponsor. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back with the Survivor Sweat Podcast.
If you live out of state but want to enter any of the biggest football handicapping contests in Las Vegas, you've come to the right place. Football Proxy is the most professional proxy service in Las Vegas and can serve as your trusted proxy to enter your picks each week for the Super Contest, Circa Sports Millions, or Circa Survivor contests. What makes Football Proxy different from other proxies? Well, like other proxies, we have late selection deadlines and an easy-to-use web portal to submit your picks each week. But, unlike other proxies, we allow our customers to change their picks anytime before the pick deadline, which is crucial when gathering last-minute information. Ask another proxy if they allow you to make changes to your picks and see their reaction. It's what makes us the top-rated proxy service in Las Vegas. To get started, fill out the contact form and a representative will contact you to answer any questions and schedule an appointment. Then book your trip to Las Vegas and meet us at the designated casino to get signed up. Once the season starts, sweat the action all season long with your picks. Schedule an appointment today and compete against the world's best for your chance at millions.
Okay, we are back. Let's look ahead at week 13. We got some interesting games here. We do have some games with some larger spreads. I just don't know if anybody has the ability to take them.
By the way, I'm sorry. One more comment on last week. I know we're supposed to wrap up.
Okay, yeah.
How sick was Monday night? How could I forget to even talk about that? I'm not going to say a lot about it.
Watching that game, we watched
that was
game.
Worse. And I'm going to say this, and I think anybody that's sick enough to listen to this podcast has got to feel the same way. For all the years the NFL like poo-pooed gambling, sports betting, fantasy football, all that stuff, if there's no sports betting and there's no fantasy football, I'm a football junkie my whole life. I would turn on the game. I don't think I make it out of the first quarter. I'm like, this was so bad.
We've seen some really bad football being played this year, but this game specifically, I mean, if you're on the Vikings there, I mean, I'd just rather just get smashed. That was like a slow bleed.
Who's going to get smashed? No one can score points. No one's getting smashed. But it was one of the most painful NFL games I've ever seen. And there were a few of them, and we've talked about this when we were with Alex as well. And he goes, wow, this game, I forget which game we're watching. It really doesn't matter because it's pretty terrible. And I've now said this, and I ask all of you to think about this and do this the next time if you're in a sports bar, you're at home with 8 TVs, whatever it is, and you're watching some game that looks like trash. Look at every other game that's out there at that moment, and I guarantee you won't find more than 2 that look legitimate, and I take the under on 2. There are like 6 or 7 teams in the NFL that are worth watching. And so if they're playing each other, Kansas City, Philly, it's going to be a good game.
Yeah.
But right now, if you told me Kansas City's playing Tennessee, like, who cares? If you tell me the Patriots are playing anybody in the NFL, who cares, right? There's so much garbage out there, and I know the NFL's had parity for a long time. This is not the same as parity. Like, this is a few good teams, maybe 1 or 2 tier 2 teams, like a Jacksonville, like you're just not quite sure are they legit or not.
Yeah.
And everybody else, they're not mediocre. They're just bad. They're trash.
The quarterback play is like unreal
it's
bad.
Absent. It's unreal bad.
It's unreal bad. It feels like everybody's in a rebuild besides the 7
Everybody's in
teams.
a rebuild.
It's incredible.
And we joked also the Raiders. And that's, you don't even have to say anything else, but the Raiders, right?
Yeah,
like, I remember it was last week or 2 weeks ago, and they're like, in the playoff picture, they're posting it up in Monday Night Football or something. They're listing the Raiders as, in the hunt. And I'm like, what are you kidding? And somebody pointed out to me on as Monday, we're watching the game. They go, if the Raiders have won one more game, any of them, just one more, they're actually in the hunt. They're like, they're like maybe a half game out of the playoffs. And I'm like, they're not very good.
No,
I want to be nice because we know some people over there, but they're certainly not a playoff team.
No, that wild card weekend is going to have some
Garbage.
Use
Some garbage. It's going to be some serious garbage. All right. So I apologize. I took us away for those of you who wanted to hear what's going on next week. So let's do that.
So who are we taking? So you got the Dolphins -9, but only 1.3% of the pool has them available to pick against the Commander at the Commanders. You got the Cowboys -8.5 versus the Seahawks.
How many people have the Cowboys left?
2.5%.
Right. Doesn't matter.
Exactly. So we'll start getting into the meat of it here. So you got the Jags -8 versus the Bengals on Monday night. It's a 78% win rate game. Probably, it looks like 42.5% availability.
I'm going to circle here a little bit. So this goes to actually what I said a minute ago, that most of the NFL right now is unfortunately just trash. So you look down, and I'm just going to go down odds to win first, then I'm going to look at popularity real quick, right? So if you were just trying to find favorites, Miami and Dallas are your top two teams, but as we've talked about before,
nobody has them.
Miami and Dallas have been your top two of your top six. I'll be really out there. You know, maybe Miami played Buffalo and they're not on the list, right? They've been right, two of the top six, and then you've got Jacksonville, then you've got Kansas City. Right. So Kansas City has also been some of the top picks all year. So this is like not helpful.
So let me tell you something about Kansas. So Kansas City has 17.5%, but we all know why.
Yeah, because you can't use them.
You got to save them for Christmas.
Correct.
Unless you got the Eagles in your back pocket.
Right. And how many have the Eagles left?
I do not have that in front of me because the Eagles were just not a game I was looking at.
No, of course not. You're not taking them this week anyway, but you're in a weird spot because if you don't have the Eagles left, you can't really use Kansas City because of Christmas. So, you know, who are you using? And this could be, and I hate to say this, and I don't, and some people say this every week. I literally almost never say this. This could be the rare week. I'm really looking down the board, depending on who you have left. Man, you might have to push the button and go with everybody. Everyone's going to be on Jacksonville. It's just terrible. So I don't want to do it. So again, you know, you look down the list. Do you still have Detroit left? How many people have Detroit left?
Oh, gosh.
Everybody that had them used them. 2%.
So here's a couple sneaky plays, and I don't think they're going to be sneaky. I think that the public's going to be on
the Rams and the Chargers.
So you got the Bucks -5.5 versus the Panthers. There are 98.8% of the people that have them. There's no future value going forward.
They're going to be the true chalk, though. They're going to be like, when I'm looking at this, you know, I didn't even go down that far into the dumpster.
So take a look at the Bucks and Steelers.
Yeah, by the way, the initial look for non-Circa pools, you would have like 35% on Tampa Bay, 22% on Jacksonville, 20% on Pittsburgh, right? So, you know, I guess if I'm calling this the quote-unquote sneaky play, it's not that sneaky.
Yeah.
You know, you're looking at the Rams or the Chargers. I guess I go Chargers at New England as opposed to Rams at home. You put a gun to my head, but like,
you really want to?
No, I don't want any of this trash.
Really
but
I pick the Chargers.
Would you take New England?
No,
thank you.
I don't even watch that game. Well,
and in fairness, the Rams versus Cleveland is probably the better play. The problem is that we've been burned by the Rams. I just have no desire to go near the Rams again. But if I'm looking down the list, like if I were ranking them, normally it's like Dallas, Miami, Jacksonville. But I don't want to take Jacksonville because everyone's going to be on Jacksonville.
Sure.
Then you got Detroit. No one has Detroit left. I'm assuming if you have Detroit left, go ahead and use them. I mean, I guess that's fine. Go ahead and use them.
Yeah.
Although they're at New Orleans, it's not a great spot.
No.
And then you've got the Rams, then you got the Chargers. And then, by the way, I can go down a little deeper if you like. You got the Steelers. Is that one of your sneaky picks?
Yeah, no, not so sneaky anymore. But here, I think the public's going to be on the Bucks, the Steelers, and the Jags. I think it's going to be 30, 20, 20, somewhere in that range. I think the real sneaky play is the Rams versus the Browns. It's going to have low ownership, and it's I believe it's like the second highest EV play on the board.
Well, sort of. I mean, if you're not counting, and you're right not to count them, but if you're not counting Dallas, Miami, Detroit, because the highest EV plays really are Miami, Dallas, Kansas City, Jacksonville, Detroit, right? And
no, for sure. If you're sitting here with the Dolphins in your back pocket or the Chiefs, and you got the Eagles, but you got to be careful now. I mean, Jalen Hurts has a knee issue. I mean, he's playing through it. He's healthy, but you know, they get a win here, or you know, maybe they rest down the stretch. That's where you got to make sure you have multiple opportunities to play these picks. Or maybe you have the Niners. I don't know how many people actually have the Niners left, but if you have the Chiefs and you have several of those plays or one of those plays, I mean, you have an advantage. You can take them here at the Packers, or if you, like you said, if you have the Dolphins, you can slip them through, and hopefully one of the Jags, Steelers, Bucks goes down and clip another percentage of the pool, and your equity just
to
climbs.
be clear, if you have Miami or Dallas left, go for it, because you're in a really good spot here that you're going to have basically everybody on, Jacksonville and Tampa.
And to be clear, they do have the highest EV because the low ownership. I just wasn't putting that into play because of like who has them. We're talking to like two people here.
But even non-Circa pools are assuming only 2% will take Miami, 1% will take Dallas. Here, it could be about the same if everybody just unloads there. But it's a great spot if you've got it. I mean, but if you've still got Miami or Dallas left, you probably don't need my advice to say use them. Yeah. So you kind of come full circle, and I wouldn't use Kansas City unless you also have Philly. And as Mike noted, that's still dangerous. It still carries risk. I wouldn't use Jacksonville for all the reasons we discussed. Just going to be too many people on them. So if you really want to push the button for next week, you can do it, but you still don't know Jacksonville is not one of those automatics like when you use Miami, Dallas, Kansas City, or Philly, or San Francisco, and you lose, that really sucks because you're not going to take Kansas City this week when they play Philly. Right? It's never going to happen. So when you take those teams when they're big favorites and you lose, that really is the bad beat, because those are supposed to be your free squares.
Exactly.
Where you move ahead.
Exactly.
Jacksonville versus Cincinnati, they're right to be favored. Joe Burrow's not there. I would not call that a free square.
No.
So if you're looking at that, if that's not a free square, why are you really taking them as opposed to, say, the Chargers or the Rams? I personally wouldn't make it all the way down to Houston versus Denver, but they're technically on the list of takeable, but not to me.
Hey, Denver's now
I would actually, by the way, I could pull an Alex Brown and I could take the dog. I could take Denver.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, I think Denver they're talking now about Sean Payton as coach of the year. Meanwhile, they were talking before about like game 2. They're like, you should go.
Oh, man. What the Broncos has put us through, and you're going to just push the button on the Broncos now?
Well, no, because I don't have to push the button. Remember, I mentioned it's easy to say if you don't actually have to push the button.
Of course.
Pushing the button's hard.
We'll push any button now, for crying out loud.
I think for the record, we'll pop it out there on Saturday. But it sounds like, because I've known you a little while, it sounds like, assuming we had them both available, you probably take the Rams. I probably take the Chargers, but it's close. Normally you'd persuade me to go the other way, but we would be having the heated debate on Saturday morning. Yeah,
there's a lot
about the pros and cons. We'd pull the injury reports. We'd pull all the data on the game.
Much more work need to be done for sure.
We'd make a late decision, but right now I suspect those are the two games we would be looking at if we were still in this pool.
I believe so.
Because we would not have Miami or Dallas remaining. We would have burned them. I'd love to say we'd have them left. We wouldn't.
No.
We wouldn't use Kansas City here. I'd avoid Jacksonville because they're chalky.
Nope.
Detroit would already be gone probably too. And even if they weren't gone after last week, and I don't know that I love them on the road.
Yeah.
So,
and we're not on the Bucks because people are going to be hunting the Panthers. So it's going to be Bucks, Steelers, Jags are going to be the high leverage percentages there, the high plays for the public, and we would be most likely, as we're talking this through, down to those two teams.
I think so.
And we'll let you know who we take on the Twitter feed on Saturday.
We will.
All right, so over at the Survivor Sweat Marketplace, things are heating up again. Runners are trying to sell some of their equity because, as we would know, this is a winner-take-all pool. And so currently there are 10 single entries available, purchasing between 14 and 149. There's also some small equity pieces that you could purchase as well, as the implied value is $115,000, 837. So that's real money. And I hear that there is one gentleman.
There's a picture. There's a picture of one guy.
There's a picture.
There's only one guy that has a picture.
Yes.
It's really weird.
Last year's co-champ, Alex Brown, has...
We berated him mercilessly, and no, not that much. We just pointed out the obvious. Hey, maybe you want to go ahead and hedge off some of this. So he did choose to go put up a listing. He's going to keep controlling it. But of all the people, at least you got a guy that is A, a winner from last year, and B, a winner from last year that's now in the top 80. So if you're going to go ahead and let somebody else pull the trigger on it, he's probably the right guy to do it.
Yes.
And I can also speak for Alex. We worked with him a lot last year. I can't go into great detail, but I have literally zero doubts as to his integrity. But anything you do, as you know, you always want to have a contract. You want to make sure someone looks it over, and that's one of the things Survivor Sweat. You can go out there and get a random lawyer. I am an attorney, but I try not to practice. So I am not giving legal advice other than get a lawyer.
Yep.
But the reality is, if you gave this to some lawyer that doesn't deal in sports betting or Circa Survivor, they're going to charge you for the first 10 hours to figure out what the hell the pool is. Like, what am I even trying to do for you?
Correct.
I don't even know what that is before they even start putting together a contract. They're not going to understand the tax consequences, because there are some very unique tax consequences here that make it difficult for one person to get paid and then split the money up. You really need to find yourself at Circa getting the right tax forms. And I know the guys over at Survivor Sweat have dealt with a lot of those contracts. So they know what's going on.
This is
so
true.
It's just faster and easier and probably cheaper too.
I also hear that they have been facilitating some swaps,
which is very cool. We talked about that earlier, and it's really tricky to figure out. So it's not so tricky to figure out two people that want to swap. That's fairly easy, right? Which, by the way, people wonder about this, and some people kind of call it collusion. Like, if we didn't start together, but I decided, hey, late, cool, we're both in, let's partner up. Circa appears generally fine with it because we could have partnered up when it started, so partnering up now is really no different. So to phrase it, which sounds kind of bad, unlike poker, you are actually kind of allowed to collude.
Yeah.
Now the question is, if you're going to do that, you know, if it's your brother or whatever, you trust each other, it's fine. If it's not, it's the same thing as selling a piece and buying a piece.
Yeah.
You're going to go ahead and need to get, you know, you're going to need to actually get some contracts in place. What makes this a little bit trickier, when you sell an entry, you don't charge anything to list the entry at Survivor Sweat, but when you do sell it, Survivor Sweat takes a small piece. I mean, it's a business. They got to take their cut. It's fine.
Sure.
And nobody seems upset about it. Everybody seems fine with it. It's
Legal
not a big
fees.
deal. Correct. I mean, they're putting all this stuff together, and so they're getting paid. It's fine. It is what it is. Like, again, far cheaper than a lawyer would charge you. However, if you're making a swap, like I'm going to say, hey, let's each trade half. And they look up and go, okay, good. You know, we're going to charge you, you know, whatever they would charge on a sale, whatever, 5%, 10%, whatever it is, right?
Sure.
Well, now suddenly imagine you've got to come out of pocket with money. Like, you only have $1,000 in this contest. You're not going to show up and go, okay, here's 20 grand for legal fees.
Yeah,
like,
and I know we're down to 80, but I mean, we're a far ways from getting to the finish line here.
Equity and cash are not the same thing.
Correct.
And so you have an issue, and what, you know, we've talked to some of the guys over there. We obviously know the guys over there, and what we're trying to encourage them to do, and hopefully they'll be happy I say this, and they're working on it, but both cash options, or if somebody'd rather just pay cash, they can pay cash, or like attorneys sometimes do, they charge on contingency, right? So that's fine. It's always cheaper if you pay cash because it's cash, they get paid. But they're working on some products where they can say, okay, look, we understand you may not have the cash now, but we'll take a piece of your entry, right? And they'll base it on what it's worth today. Right. So if they were going to charge you, you know, I'm picking numbers. I don't know what it would be, you know, well, I'm going to use a number it isn't because I don't want to put numbers in their mouth. If they were going to charge you $100, it's obviously more than that. But if they were to charge you $100 in cash, maybe they're going to charge you, you know, $250 or $300 in equity because they may never get paid. Matter of fact, may never. They're more likely than not to not get paid. With 80 entries left, even if the two of us team up and we make sure we have different picks or whatever, you're still only 1 in 40 to win.
Yeah.
If you think you're twice as good as everybody else and you have better entries remaining, you're 1 in 20 to win.
Sure.
And so, you know, 80% of the time these guys aren't getting paid anyway. So it seems reasonable if they're willing to take a piece that it's going to be more than if you paid cash. And one thing I can tell you is if they, you know, I know they work closely with some of the proxy services. If they own a piece, they're going to be right on top of that proxy to make sure
of course. And I mean, I would be willing to give a small piece of equity instead of cash out of my pocket. I mean, like I said, the cash might never get in my pocket.
Of course, it's such a strange thing, right? Because you look right now and you take an entry and you know, on paper it's worth $115,000. It's not like if you can go sell it for $115,000, go do it. If you can sell half of it, do that, and they'll charge you the percentage and you're done. It's fine. But if you wanted to go ahead and just swap with somebody and not come out of pocket for cash, well, if they took 10% of your entry, somebody might look up and go, well, if I win, that means I'm paying them $900,000 or something, right? Well, one, you'd have to win by yourself. That's a whole nother question. But two, sure, maybe. But the reality is it's only worth $11,500 today.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's really all it's worth. And so I'm not saying 11.5 is high or low. That's, you know, up to you guys to all decide. But you are dealing with lawyers putting together contracts, and it's hard to get a lawyer to get out of bed for less than 10 grand.
Yeah.
So,
and you don't want like a bad lawyer.
You want people that are familiar with it. But I also think, you know, I could be wrong. I'm wrong plenty. My wife tells me that all the time. But the reality is that, you know, I think Survivor Sweat's probably doing this for less than they could if they were just charging, because they really are. They're trying to build a marketplace. They're trying to get everything kind of set up, and they're trying to be the ones that you look to and call on in the space. And so you may as well look and call on them, because worst case, you can just go no.
Yeah, of course.
Right, but at least you can try to figure it out. And I think swaps are a great idea when you make it deep. I think getting deals done with people are a great idea when you make it deep. Circa may disagree. And I'm going to say this before, and I know they always hate it when I say this. I do think Circa, I'm just going to keep saying it till I'm blue in the face, and Jeff Benson will give me the thumbs down if I don't think that's still a thing on X. But Circa does not get involved in these. You've just got a contract with a third party, but it is a legally binding, real contract. My opinion is Circa should acknowledge them and get the seller of any of these things, particularly in a sale, to sign off and say, I relinquish all my rights, because you just don't want to spot at the very end where Circa gets dragged into some sort of dispute. And you'd rather the person can't dispute because they've waived. But for now, they don't do that. But assuming the people go in there and they go, this is how we all need to be paid, that is what they'll do. Just like you have a partner, they'll go in there and, split it up amongst your partners.
All right. Well, that's a wrap on the Week 13 look ahead. If you get a chance, hit us up on the Survivor Sweat X handle. If you have any questions, you want to reach out to us. If there's defending champs still in the contest, we'd like to know who you are. We have the discussion board at survivorsweat.com. And
I'm going to have one more comment.
Yeah,
just like before. I keep doing this.
Yeah. Well, you have your jacket on. You can.
I do that. You can always just stop listening. It doesn't matter. I could be talking to myself. I think we're going to see. I think we're at the cross point.
Yeah.
So I think if you buy 20% of an entry or 5% or whatever, maybe you pay over par. Some people asked on Twitter last night, I'm getting ready to list something. Should I list over par, under par, at par? Right. And I just do whatever you want, obviously. But my opinion, I do not think you will see a controlling interest, so 51% or more, sell for above par anymore. Could sell at par, but I'd actually be surprised. I think it'd be under. How much under? I don't know. Could be 10%, could be 40%. I don't think anybody sells 40% under now. I think when you think your entry is worth $1 million and you have the risk of getting zero, I think somebody might. But I would be surprised to see an entry sell over par going forward.
Yep. I completely agree.
All right.
That's it for Survivor Sweat Pod 13. Get your picks in and hope you survive.
See you next week.
See ya.
Looking for Survivor strategy articles? Did you lose your last entry on a Survivor contest and wish you could rebuy? Check out our marketplace and you may find what you need. Head over to survivorsweat.com for all things Survivor. And we'll see you next week for the next Survivor Sweat podcast.